Melchizedek. Even his name sounds like some kind of mystical incantation. He pops up in the Bible out of nowhere. Like a magician doing a card trick, he appears, does something incredible, and then vanishes. No past, no future, just a single dazzling act on the stage of biblical history. Who was this guy? What was his deal? Good questions, mate. The Bible, usually so keen on background stories, keeps it surprisingly vague about Melchizedek. We're left scratching our heads, wondering about this mysterious figure. It's like finding a hidden door in an old house. You just have to know what's behind it. The book of Genesis introduces Melchizedek during one of the Bible's most famous stories, Abraham's rescue of Lot. Imagine battles, kings, drama. It's a blockbuster movie waiting to happen. And right in the middle of it all, we meet Melchizedek. Not bad for a guy who only gets a few lines. So picture the scene: dust, sweat, the aftermath of a brutal battle. Abraham, fresh from victory, encounters this Melchizedek fellow. It's like bumping into a celebrity chef at a greasy spoon. You don't expect it, but hey, you're intrigued. The Bible tells us that Melchizedek was the king of Salem, which some scholars believe might be Jerusalem. But hold on, there's more. He's also described as a priest of God Most High. Now that's a title that makes you sit up and pay attention. A king and a priest, this guy's got it all. It's an odd combination, one that makes Melchizedek even more fascinating. He's a spiritual leader, but also a political heavyweight. Think Dalai Lama meets Winston Churchill, with a dash of Indiana Jones thrown in for good measure. You don't meet a guy like that every day. Melchizedek's appearance isn't just a random cameo. This is no walk-on part. He's there for a reason, and it's a big one. He blesses Abraham in the name of God Most High, recognizing the patriarch's own deep faith. This isn't just a casual good job, mate. This is a powerful blessing from a man clearly in tune with the divine. And then comes the real head-scratcher. Abraham, this giant of faith, this man chosen by God to father a nation, does something unexpected. He gives Melchizedek a tenth of everything he has. We're not talking about spare change here, people. This is a significant chunk of his wealth. Now, Abraham wasn't known for being a pushover, so why hand over such a huge offering to this mysterious king-priest? What did Melchizedek have that compelled Abraham to show him such incredible respect? It's a question that has puzzled theologians and scholars for centuries. Buckle up, folks, because we're about to dive into a mystery that's as intriguing as it is ancient. Imagine a world before Twitter, Instagram, even before TikTok. Shocking, I know. This is the ancient world, a time when news traveled slower than a snail in a traffic jam. It's a time of kings and kingdoms, battles and bloodshed, and it's into this world that our story drops us, right in the middle of a full-blown royal rumble. Abraham, our leading man, has just pulled off a daring rescue mission. His nephew Lot got caught up in a turf war between a bunch of squabbling kings. Think of it as a real-life Game of Thrones, with less incest and more sand. Abraham, being the stand-up guy he is, gathers his men and charges into battle, sending those nasty kings packing. Now, after a good dust-up, you'd think a celebratory barbecue would be in order, and you'd be right. But as Abraham's celebrating his victory, someone unexpected crashes the party. He's not there to rain on the parade, though. He's there to offer something far more intriguing. He's there to offer a blessing. Out of the swirling dust and fading echoes of battle emerges Melchizedek. This isn't some battle-scarred warrior, mind you. This is a figure of quiet authority, a man who commands respect without raising his voice. He's a king, the ruler of Salem, a place shrouded in as much mystery as the man himself. But wait, there's more. Melchizedek isn't just a king, he's also a priest. Not just any priest, mind you, but a priest of God Most High. That's like being the CEO and the spiritual guru of a Fortune 500 company, all rolled into one. Talk about multitasking. This double whammy of titles makes Melchizedek a bit of an enigma. He walks the line between the earthly and the divine, between the power of the throne room and the serenity of the temple. He's a living paradox, and frankly, that's what makes him so darn interesting. So, you've got these two heavyweights, Abraham, the warrior patriarch, and Melchizedek, the king-priest, standing face to face in the aftermath of a battle. The air crackles with the weight of their presence. It's like watching a meeting of minds between, well, pick your favorite historical figures. Churchill and Gandhi, maybe, or Einstein and Marie Curie. Melchizedek, in a gesture that echoes throughout history, raises his hands and blesses Abraham, This isn't some casual good luck with that whole chosen people thing kind of blessing. This is a profound, heartfelt benediction, a recognition of the divine spark that burns within Abraham. Abraham, a man who's faced famine, fled his homeland and fought off armies, is visibly moved. Here's a man who understands the weight of his calling, the challenges and triumphs that lie ahead. It's a meeting of souls, a moment of mutual respect forged in the crucible of conflict. And then comes the kicker, the moment that has puzzled theologians and armchair historians for centuries. Abraham gives Melchizedek a tenth of everything he owns. We're not talking about spare change here. This is a king's ransom, a gesture of immense generosity and, dare I say, submission. Think about it. Abraham, this self-made man, this leader of men, willingly offers a huge chunk of his wealth to this enigmatic king-priest. Why? What compelled him to do it? Was it a mark of respect for Melchizedek's spiritual authority? A recognition of his kingly status? Or was it something more, something that speaks to a deeper spiritual reality? This act, this tithe, is the heart of the mystery. It's a gesture that echoes down through time, sparking debate and speculation. It's a riddle wrapped in an enigma, served with a side of ancient history. And frankly, that's what makes this whole story so captivating. Right, let's talk about this whole tithing business. It's not just some archaic religious practice that went out with togas and chariot racing. Back in Abraham's day, tithing was a big deal. It was like paying your taxes, but instead of funding roads and bridges, you were supporting the religious elite, the guys in charge of keeping the gods happy. Think of it as a spiritual protection racket, but without the shady backroom deals and questionable accounting practices. You give a portion of your income, usually a tenth, to the priests, and they, in turn, offer sacrifices, say prayers, and generally act as intermediaries between you and the big guy upstairs. Now, this wasn't just some random custom that people followed because they were bored. Tithing was deeply ingrained in their culture, their worldview. It was a way of acknowledging that everything they had, their crops, their livestock, even their kids, thankfully that part's gone out of fashion, were ultimately gifts from the gods. Tithing was about showing gratitude, about recognizing that they were part of something bigger than themselves. So, back to Abraham and his generous donation. Was it just a matter of following social protocol? You know, like when you bring a bottle of wine to a dinner party even though you suspect it'll end up gathering dust in their cellar. Was Abraham simply adhering to the customs of the time, acknowledging Melchizedek's priestly status with a bit of a financial thank you? It's possible, but here's the thing. Abraham wasn't exactly known for being a blind follower of tradition. This was a man who was willing to pack up his entire life, leave his homeland and wander around the desert because of a voice in his head. Granted, it was God's voice, but still, he was a maverick, a risk-taker, a man who followed his gut, even when it led him into uncharted territory. So, the fact that he gave so freely, so readily to Melchizedek suggests that there was something more to it. This wasn't just about social etiquette, it was about recognizing something deeper, something profound in the man who stood before him. Let's not forget who Abraham was, the chosen one, the father of nations, the man handpicked by God to start a lineage that would change the world. He was no ordinary bloke, this Abraham chap. And he wasn't in the habit of bowing and scraping to just anyone. So when Abraham, this giant of faith, gives a tenth of everything he owns to Melchizedek, it sends a pretty strong message, wouldn't you say? It's like Elon Musk rocking up to a tech startup and saying, you know what? I believe in you. Here's $1 billion, go make something amazing. It's a gesture that speaks volumes about Abraham's state of mind. He'd just come from a major victory, rescued his nephew and was probably feeling pretty chuffed with himself. But then he meets Melchizedek, this king priest who radiates an otherworldly aura. And something shifts within him. It's like he recognizes a spiritual authority that transcends earthly titles and conquests. A hierarchical nod. Did Abraham acknowledge a higher power? This act of tithing, then, becomes more than just a financial transaction. It's an act of submission, a recognition of a spiritual hierarchy that places Melchizedek on a higher rung than even Abraham himself. And that's where things get really interesting because, let's face it, Abraham is kind of a big deal in the Bible. He's the OG of faith, the patriarch, the guy who kicked off the whole Judeo-Christian tradition. So, to see him acknowledging someone else as spiritually superior is, well, it's like watching a heavyweight champion getting knocked out in the first round. It's unexpected, it's unsettling, and it leaves you wondering what the hell just happened. Some might argue that it's a sign of Melchizedek's mysterious, almost mythical status. He's like a spiritual Yoda, a being of immense wisdom and power who operates on a level that even someone as devout as Abraham can only aspire to. The tithe that keeps on giving relevance across the ages. What's it got to do with me? I'm just trying to get through the day without spilling coffee on my shirt. But these ancient stories worm their way into our modern lives. The story of Abraham and Melchizedek forces us to ask big questions. Questions about authority, respect, and faith. It challenges us to delve into belief and spirituality. Maybe it might inspire us to be more generous and recognize the good in others. Top of the pops, is Melchizedek the biggest cheese? So, we've got Abraham, the VIP of faith, bowing low and giving a hefty chunk of his loot to this Melchizedek bloke. It's enough to make you spit out your tea, isn't it? Does this mean Melchizedek is higher up the spiritual ladder than old Abe? Is he the Beyoncé of the Bible, headlining while everyone else sings backup? It's a question that sparked more theological debates than a pub quiz on a Friday night. Some folks reckon it's a no-brainer. Melchizedek, with his king-priest combo and that mysterious aura, must be a bigger deal than even Abraham. He's like the godfather of faith, dispensing blessings like party favors. Others, though, reckon it's not that simple. They say, hold your horses, mate. Giving someone a tenth of your sheep doesn't automatically make them the Pope. They argue that Abraham was simply showing respect to a fellow man of faith, acknowledging Melchizedek's priestly authority without putting him on a pedestal taller than the Tower of Babel. The great debate: theologians versus armchair quarterbacks. Now, I'm no theologian, mate. I'm more of a read the Bible with a cup and a biscuit kind of guy. But even I can see that this whole Melchizedek business is a bit of a head-scratcher. It's like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube after a few pints down the pub. Intriguing, but ultimately frustrating. Theologians, those clever clogs who dedicate their lives to untangling biblical knots, have been going at it hammer and tongs for centuries. They've written enough books on the subject to fill the Library of Alexandria, each one offering a different interpretation, a different angle on the mystery. It's a bit like watching a bunch of football pundits arguing over a controversial penalty decision. Everyone's got their own opinion, their own interpretation of the rules, but no one can agree on a definitive answer. And you know what? I reckon that's part of the beauty of it all. Jesus, the ultimate Melchizedek remix? Now, just when you thought things couldn't get any more intriguing, the New Testament rocks up and throws a curveball into the mix. Turns out Melchizedek makes a surprise guest appearance in the story of Jesus. That's right, the king priest from way back when gets a shout out in the big leagues. The book of Hebrews draws a parallel between Melchizedek and Jesus, suggesting that Jesus is, in a sense, the ultimate fulfillment of the Melchizedekian priesthood. He's the king and priest par excellence, the one who bridges the gap between God and humanity once and for all. It's like Melchizedek was a prototype, a rough draft, and Jesus is the finished product, the sleek, upgraded version that blows everything else out of the water. It's enough to make your head spin, but in a good way, like you've just stepped off a roller coaster after a thrilling ride. A hierarchy of holiness? Sounds like a cracking bird. Now, this whole idea of a spiritual pecking order, with some folks being closer to God than others, can make some people a bit uncomfortable. It smacks of elitism, of a celestial VIP lounge where only the holiest of holies get to hang out. But you know what? I reckon there's another way to look at it. Instead of seeing it as a rigid hierarchy, we can view it as a celebration of the diversity of faith, the different ways in which people connect with the divine. It's like a massive spiritual buffet, with something for everyone, regardless of where they are on their faith journey. Melchizedek, in this sense, represents a different flavor of faith, a path less traveled. He's a reminder that there's always more to learn, always deeper mysteries to explore, and that sometimes the greatest insights come from the most unexpected sources. So, what's the takeaway from this whole Melchizedek saga? Well, for starters, it's a reminder that even the most devout, the most faithful among us, can benefit from a healthy dose of humility. Abraham, the father of nations, wasn't afraid to acknowledge someone else's spiritual authority, to recognize that he didn't have all the answers. And you know what? That's a lesson we can all take to heart. In a world that often prizes arrogance and self-promotion, there's something refreshing, even revolutionary, about admitting that we don't know everything, that we can learn from others, even those who might seem different or strange. So, the next time you're feeling a bit too sure of yourself, a bit too convinced of your own righteousness, remember Melchizedek, the mysterious king priest who popped up out of nowhere and taught even the father of faith a thing or two about humility and awe. It might just change your perspective, and who knows, it might even make you a slightly more tolerable human being. So there you have it, mate, the tale of Melchizedek. We've been through the biblical equivalent of a Formula One race, twists, turns, and a few pit stops along the way. But have we actually crossed the finish line? Or are we left with more questions than answers? Frankly, I reckon that's the whole point. Melchizedek isn't some historical puzzle to be solved, like who nicked the last biscuit from the tin. He's more like a Zen koan, those riddles Buddhist monks use to scramble your brain and make you question everything you thought you knew. He pops up in the Bible like a magician's rabbit, does his thing, then vanishes in a puff of smoke. We're left scratching our heads, wondering about his origins, his purpose, his favourite brand of beard oil. And you know what? That's all right. Sometimes, the greatest mysteries are the ones that keep us guessing. We live in a world obsessed with answers, with explanations for everything. Got a question? Google it. Need to know what your ex had for breakfast? Stalk them on Instagram. But the story of Melchizedek reminds us that some things are best left unexplored, like that weird smell coming from your mate's gym bag. There's a certain beauty in the unknown, in the mysteries that lie beyond our comprehension. It's like staring up at a star-filled sky and realizing the sheer vastness of the universe, the possibility of life beyond our little blue planet. It makes you feel small, sure, but also strangely exhilarated. Melchizedek, with his enigmatic smile and his king-priest swagger, embodies that sense of wonder. He's a reminder that it's okay not to have all the answers, that sometimes the greatest adventures begin where the map ends and the unknown beckons. Now you might be thinking, Jeremy, mate, this is all very poetic and whatnot, but what's the practical application here? How does this Melchizedek bloke help me navigate the daily grind of work, bills, and trying to find a decent cup of tea? And fair enough. We're all on our own paths, trying to make sense of this crazy thing called life. We have those moments of quiet reflection, those gut feelings. It's about embracing the journey, with all its twists and turns. We've always got our own inner compass, guiding us towards our own unique understanding of the divine. Heavenly Father, we come before you in awe of your eternal wisdom and the mysteries revealed through your word. As we reflect on Melchizedek, the priest and king, a figure of righteousness and peace, we seek understanding and unity. Open our hearts to the truths that transcend traditions and point us to your divine purpose. Teach us to walk in righteousness, guided by your Spirit, and to embrace the universal call to worship you in spirit and in truth. May our lives reflect the peace and justice that you desire for all creation. In your holy name we pray. Amen. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the fascinating story of Melchizedek. If you enjoyed this exploration and want to dive deeper into the connections between faiths, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Let's continue uncovering the threads that unite us. See you in the next video.